the technology in vehicles, how we update that, how we customise that for like customers both now and going forward. So quickly, for anyone who's not aware, and I will drop into acronyms I'm sure, but what is Jaguar Land Rover? We build vehicles that do this stuff. We also block roads in Cheshire and get lots of complaints from footballers' wives. But as well as that luxury element that we're pushing for, we can also do this. So the Boulder Rally, seen from James Bond, with the vehicles they've just auctioned off. So that's quite a range of stuff that we're trying to do. So when I first thought about like what I could talk about, I found it really difficult to choose. I felt I could talk about like this is what our vehicles will do in the future. So we could talk about content cryptography and the messaging. We could talk about sort of how navigation will use UI to learn your favourite routes, put those into your journeys, and when you're on those routes, it'll quieten down because it's like you're comfortable here, you know what's going on. But I didn't want it to just become a marketing pitch about all those sorts of things. So I thought, okay, then I'm an engineer. I'll go down the engineering route, and we can talk about, okay, how do we make those flexible configurations? How do we like adapt and do that bit manipulation to sort of make those vehicles as flexible and customizable as possible? Or software pack creation, testing, deployment. And then maybe the architecture. So we currently do 9.5 million updates over the air that we'll come to in a minute. But the expectation is that'll be 27 million in a couple of years' time. But I realised that I'd quickly run out of time on stuff we could talk about. But what I then realised was what was making it so difficult to know what to talk about was actually what makes it a brilliant time to be working in the automotive industry and especially in software in that industry. And it's this here that like the vehicle has become this hub around which all this technology spins. So we've got diagnostics, we've got AI, you've got your machine learning, all that data analysis. If you're interested in robotics, we've got sort of automated manufacturing lines that you can work on. We'll talk more about vehicle updates and sort of the configuration, fleet management, part management across all the factories and that sort of thing. You've got VR for design studios and all that as well. So all this stuff is sort of hovering around the vehicle, and it's that makes it such a great space for innovation and integration, because I can go, like at work, I can say, I'm interested in this area. I can find people working on that and talk about it. And so, that's the main bit here. So first of all, what I'm going to do is roll it back a little bit. Now that is not a Jaguar or a Land Rover. That is my dad's car, and he loved that car. But ultimately, and it was fine. I think it's safe to say that once he had purchased that car, it wasn't going to change. Unless he added a tow bar or roof rack or something like that, it wasn't going to make any difference apart from getting muddy and cleaning. Unless there was a faulty part on board. And so that reminds me, like one weekend he decided he was going to change the brakes. Now we lived on a bit of a hill, which is probably why I remember this story. And it did roll into the neighbour's front garden, but that was only the first time. So he changed the brakes. He took his Haynes manual, he flipped through it, he changed all the pads. And it took him all weekend. But this is how we do it now. So this was 2018, so not quite now, but this is, for anyone who's not aware, this is Tesla updating the braking software and the brakes on their vehicles. So they launched a model, it was not up to scratch, it was behind sort of competitors in terms of braking distance. So they overnight released a software patch, and it improved that braking distance by 19 feet, bringing it in line with those competitors. And this was brilliant for the customers, like great payloads. But for legislatures around the world, it was terrifying. And the reason for that is that the vehicle as a collection of parts is signed off, like this is a legal entity. And so suddenly, if you can make such a difference to a safety critical part of that system, like from a legal point of view, is it the same thing that was signed off? And we see a lot of work around regulation that is trying to sort of catch up and fill this gap. Now, we don't just have to fix things with those software updates. So this is sort of our software over the air delivery stuff that we do down the road. And you can see here, so in February, people woke up with Alexa in their car. They haven't had that before. Overnight, they've got vehicle configurations, parts of the medium and that sort of thing. June, we've got what 3 words added to the navigation and updated overnight. So what we're saying now is that vehicles aren't fixed. They can grow with those customers. You can continue to get new features. You can continue to delight people. And this is software updates. But the next step is So I refer to them generally as features, but you're looking at how you make sort of adaptable hardware. In the same way that when we design software, we think it's modular, how do we extend it? We don't know why, but we know we will. How do we do that with hardware? Make those bits flexible for use cases that we might not be aware of. So it may be I go on holiday, I go camping for the weekend, and I want to turn my car into a Wi-Fi hotspot. Why not do that for that subscribed period of time? And so fundamentally, sort of looking a bit further ahead, if we follow down that route, then if you take, so both of those sort of approaches, we're looking at the vehicle-centered, updating the vehicle. But what if we take the user and put them right in the middle, since it's their preferences, it's their driving modes, it's their seat position. And so why can't they take those with them? And so in that whole swirl of stuff I saw hovering around the vehicle, you suddenly go, right, why don't you use biometrics to unlock vehicles? Can recognise you, even in a shared family car, you've then got it personalised and customised to your individual tastes. Maybe you go on holiday and you get a rental car, why not do the same? Why can't you take those with you? And that's where we're going, and obviously there's a lot of data and systems around sort of managing that kind of experience. So we've looked at some of the classic iceberg picture, yes, comes up all the time. But so we've looked at the headlines, the top bit, but it's the underneath bit that obviously that's our value generator. That's a lot of the systems and services we work on every day, because the more we can put into that, the stronger we make that, allows us to have more of those peaks, to deliver more of those headlines, more of that delighted customer, and making it more flexible for individuals to choose those configurations themselves or have us predict them for them. And again, with the swirl of technology and everyone wanting to get involved, it allows us to turn those inwards and use those on our own pipelines, explore those, innovate in that way. Because if we're honest, beyond vehicles becoming autonomous, which seems to be fairly agreed, no one knows what you do with that space beyond that. Does everyone still need to face the same direction? Are they playing there? Are they working there? Does it need to adjust between the two? And again, that's where we're talking about this customization. So we're all, I'm going to make an assumption we're all aware of automated test pipelines and deliveries and stuff like this. So you're building, you're linting, your unit testing. My favourite part of this is always acceptance tests and tests. And whenever anyone comes to me and tells me they've added a test, they've caught more. I love that. I get excited about that, because to me that's capturing domain knowledge. That is passed down as the knowledge of ancestors. People who've learnt stuff before are telling you a message. I refer to them as ghosts, but that's your legacy. When you've moved on from that project, it's still there, it's still captured. And it allows us to deploy it. We know this for software things, and just software parts, and roll that out and out. So the challenge for us as a business now is, how do we scale that across an entire company? So 38,000 based in the Midlands, factories around the world. And we're not talking about one product or one sort of delivery thing. We're talking about design studios, talking about manufacturing, integration testing, rig testing, all that stuff I touched on before, all the opportunities to get involved and try out some of this new technology. And first Jaguar built in 35, Land Rover 48, there's a huge amount of knowledge there to try and capture, whether it's around legislation, why we've done it this way, or whatever. But it's like I said, it's all the value we put into that sort of generation, into that pipeline, that ecosystem, that allows us to continue to delight people with those peaks. So just in summary, we looked around the vehicle, we talked about how we update them over the air and how we're looking to configure those in the future with sort of that functional update as well. What happens when we put the user in the middle? Can we safely update the vehicle? Because that's the single question. We can make the best features we want. If we can't deploy it safely, no chance. Then we look quickly at the scale of the challenge and where a lot of our work goes into day to day, the excitement, and how we can use that to continue to deliver those unique experiences, predicted for customers, chosen for customers, and selected by the customers themselves. So, thank you very much.